Hey guys, we're here with a special guest today, Hasan, who finished top four at the remote regionals with the 60 card Zoodiac list. Absolutely incredible. I'm just gonna pass over to you for some shout outs and maybe some theory regarding the deck.
Yeah, so biggest shout outs go to VJ. He was my main testing partner for the last few months of the deck. My girlfriend, Aya, who I think is the only reason I stayed sane for the last few months. Everybody who helped me with theory at all, random, rare, pot and greed. And then just everybody in all the Discord servers I'm in who I rambled to about the deck for the last 6 months on and off. I appreciate you letting me talk an incessant amount. Okay, let's get to the deck list. So I'm going to show the zoo cards first and a couple of the other things to go with them. We're on one Rapier, three Thoroughblade, three Whiptail, three Ram, one Bunny Blast, three Tanky, and then the cards that make these actually function again as like a deck. One Armored Xyz, two fully Armored Xyz. I'm actually going to pull out a few cards from Extra Deck first just to show y'all how this works now. I'm going to pull out the Dark Lancer and the Xyz Armor Fortress real quick. So, these cards are new. This set came out in Age of Overlord, and the reason I can only start playing this deck as of this weekend is because this card just got imported in Maze of Millennia. So the way this deck works now is because you don't have Dreaded, you haven't had to turn one for a long time. But the Armored Xyz cards help you fix that. What the Fortress does is any rank 4 or 3 you have, you can put it on top of that, and then it can detach up to 2 materials and search the same number of Armored Xyz cards from your main deck, and then just add them to your hand. So that's these two cards here. Um, and the Dark Lancer has a few does a few things. He adds these back from grave, but the important thing is that when he becomes equipped with something, like an equip card, equip spell type thing, he can attach an opponent's monster to it as XYZ material. So now what you can do, you summon any zoo, you go for any zoo Xyz, let's just, say my boy Hammer Kong, for example. You overlay on top of the Hammer Kong the Fortress, detach the Zoo Normal and the Zoo Xyz monster to search both the trap and the spell, and then you can set the trap. Opponent's turn, you can flip the trap up. That gets you to the Dark Knight Lancer, and once you're in the Dark Knight Lancer, the trap has an effect that it can banish itself to equip a Xyz monster you control with an Xyz monster in your graveyard. So you equip this with the Zoo Xyz you detached during the last turn, and it steals an opponent's monster for Xyz material. So basically, long story short, it is just a way to get a turn one interruption again off of any zoo normal, kind of similar to what Dryden did before. It's a little bit worse than Dryden for a couple of reasons. It does only take opponent's monsters, which it means you can't do any of your like your cool like say you pop your own Ram to make plays, right? So that synergy's not there. And it does, obviously need to search those cards out. So unlike Dryden, it can actually be hit by hand traps. It doesn't work through things like Dimensional Shifter. But the one big advantage and the reason this deck kind of functions in its current iteration is because these are just a lot of cards in hand. And you'll see kind of how that ends up working out in just a bit. Real quick, I want to talk about the zoo ratios of the armored cards themselves. Um, these cards up top are the most important names. Rapier, Thoroughblade, and Whiptail all represent a 1200 plus attack Zoodiac monster in graveyard, which actually means that on turn 3, if you have another zoo monster, you can OTK off of any zoo name. If it's Whiptail in particular, you do need like an opponent to have a monster because Dark Knight Lancer gets extra attack if it takes one. But all of these represent really easy OTK lines, and these also help you debrick if you draw the Armored Xyz, because it is kind of a garnet. If you draw it, you need to be able to attach all materials from the rank 5 to be able to make the rank 7 Dark Knight Lancer. So if you draw this, it's kind of a pain, but if you have Thoroughblade plus a Zoo or Rapier at all, then you can use Chalkanine to detach one, revive a Zoo, and then that gets you down to a 1 material rank 5, so you only need to search the trap to get it down to 0 mat. So these are the most important names. And then Tenki obviously searches these, so it's good. These 4 down here are a bit weirder. Ram is kind of the next best name because he gives you targeted trap protection on your Xyz monsters. Anybody who played, like 2021 Zoodiac with like Zeus Turbo knows that being able to like hit a Borbo through an imperm is a very valuable thing that Ram Ram does. So he's kind of the most widely applicable Zoo outside of these because uh, imperms in a lot of decks. Bunny Blast was my kind of one-off extra Zoo. I wanted to hit 14 Zoo names for like math reasons. It just kind of gets me to a point where with some of the other cards in the deck you'll see later, it gives me a pretty good shot at opening 1 to 2 Zoos in my opening hand, which is where I wanted to be in 60. This I like because Runic is kind of a tough matchup with all of its quick effect removal, right? You want to be able to kind of break through boards with Zoo, and Bunny Blast lets you dodge Freezing Curses and Flashing Fire because it's a targeted spell negation. So this was like my one extra name. You could probably cut Bunny Blast or a Ram Ram if you just wanted to make room for like one more non-engine, but I was very happy with these ratios. And then these over here, this card is the Armored Exeus. The spell is like fine. It helps you OTK turn 3, which is really nice, and it helps you trigger Dark Knight Lancer on your turn, which is helpful, but ultimately it is kind of the garden of the deck, so just 1. And then 2 full armors because I didn't want to play 2 hard garnets where if you drew either, your engine was kind of off. And the second one is also there because, again, the second Dark Knight Lancer turn 3 is an OTK if you've got like a target left in deck, so you can use rank 5 again. So those are your Zoo and Armored Exeus ratios. Next up, speaking of all the cards in hand you get off of this engine, we have the best cards in the deck, which is the Horus stuff. 3 Imseti, 1 Duometef, 1 Kevasenuef, 1 Happy, and 3 Sark. We're on max names here. These cards are basically how you convert all of the extra advantage you get in hand off the Armored Exeus stuff. Like I said, the big advantage you get off of the Armored Exeus compared to something like Trident is just you get cards in hand, right? Full armor or the Exeus Armor Fortress adds 2. You don't actually have to use a trap to get into Dark Knight Lancer. You can hard make him on your turn. The only reason you do that is to get the trap in graveyard, but if you have a discard outlet like Sarker Imseti, you can just use it for more discard fodder. Dark Knight Lancer, like I said, has an effect that adds an Armored Exeus card back from graveyard, so that's another discard fodder. So like any Zoo normal is 3 free discards plus a layer of interruption. So if you open something like Sark or Imseti with any Zoo name, you basically get the full Horus line almost entirely for free, which is just really strong. I mean, Horus cards are crazy. I liked full names both because I'm on 60, so it's one of those things where you don't see them as much anyway, so the extra brick doesn't feel as bad. And it also means you have some cases where you can use all of your Horus names really efficiently, where a lot of the time what you want to be able to do is use the first 2 Horus names to make a Photon Lord before you commit anything, plays around Nib and stuff. And then you want to be able to have 2 more so you can use all the discards you have in hand, just so you can get into like more disruption, or honestly just ending your board on like 2 to 4 Horus monsters was crazy. I did that multiple times at the regionals, and it just won me games just because dealing with a whole board of Horus monsters is really difficult. So these cards are crazy. This is the big reason why the deck actually functions, is those 2 work very well together. Next up here, and the third engine in the deck, is the Adventure engine. We're on 3 Enchantress, 1 Griffin, 3 Rights, 1 Faithful, 1 Dracovac. So these are nice for a few reasons. Obviously, the Zoo monsters don't really care about any of your normal summon effects, right? So, because you just make the Xyz off 1 Zoo name. So these obviously don't conflict. They help you again play through hand traps. In particular, they actually do a lot to help you play through hand traps. It's not just Griffin in this deck, it's actually the existence of Dracovac too. Dark Knight Lancer's specific wording isn't it has to be equipped with an equip card, it's actually any monster you control has to be equipped with an equip card. So what you can do to play around hand traps without wasting Griffin is you can go, normal summon a Zoo name, make your, Xyz Armor Fortress, they negate the Armor Fortress, you can actually end on, like token plus Griffin off your Adventure engine, and just not search Draco back on your turn. And then when your opponent on their turn, they summon something you want to take with the Dark Knight Lancer, then you can go ahead, you equip Draco back directly from deck to the token, because you don't have to add it to hand, you can equip to the token direct, and that actually triggers the Dark Knight Lancer for disruption. So you actually don't have to waste Wandering Griffin Rider on something like, say, a Ash Blossom on your Xyz Armor Fortress. Something I was actually doing throughout the day was if I opened only Adventure plus Zoo, I would actually just go Zoo normal into the XZs into the rank 5 and the token, and just end on that. I wouldn't even summon Griffin because then you don't have to summon 5 times. That's exactly 4 summons. I think you just summon it as soon as you can on your opponent's main phase and helps you play even stronger around it. So this engine just makes you like very resilient to hand traps. It makes it very difficult for them to interact with your deck at all. And then the one thing that kind of helps bridge all this together is 3 small worlds. So this was kind of a last minute change. I was on like 40 to 50 cards for the longest time in this deck, and I could not help but feel like I was just breaking an unbelievable amount. It was, you're drawing like horse names you didn't want to see, you're drawing parts of the adventure engine you didn't want to see. And I was like, okay, I really want to up the deck out, kind of like the old like 60 card adventure piles people used to be on back in like 2022. And I was like, okay, what if I just go up to 60? And then I was kind of running into issues. Well, to keep the kind of ratios on my zoo names right, I'd have to add like way too many zoo names, right? Like I don't want to be on like 3 Bunny Blast and a Cataroo's type thing, right? Small World kind of helps fix that. Not only is it really nice for making sure you see a zoo name every game, it's also flexible, right? This is a deck where you really want to see 2 to 3 engines in your opening hand, and Small World being a flexible option to see any one of your 3 engines is very helpful. And you'll see kind of when we get to the non-engine here in just a second, the bridges in this deck are actually very clean just because of my non-engine choice. And then for non-engine, rest of the deck now is just kind of non-engine and weird text. We're on 3 Ash Blossom because she's Ash Blossom. These are the good bridges: 3 Bell, 3 Droll. So going into the tournament, I wanted a main deck Bell because I wanted to build primarily for Fire King and Labyrinth because that's what I expect to see the most of. I saw 0 of them, which was funny, but this did come up into the multiple Runic decks I played against, which was nice still. But Bell is your best bridge. It is Earth, which means it bridges all of your Zoodiacs. It is 1800 defense, which means it bridges Imseti because for some reason Imseti has Ghost Girl defense. And it is level 3, so it bridges Enchantress, so it bridges all 3 of your engines. And of course, because it has, kind of like those Ghost Girl stats, it also helps bridge with a lot of like your non-engine as well. Like for example, it bridges with Droll here. And Droll was your other important bridge. This is what helps bridge your Ghost Girls, because it is 0 defense, which helps you bridge into exactly Thoroughblade. It is Spellcaster, which helps you bridge into Imseti and Enchantress. So these 2 were really nice for bridging. Even into matchups where these weren't live, like for example, like I took this out into Pearly, I took this out into Runic. Both of these, I still always kept at least 1 copy in my main deck after siding because they're just like really good small world bridges. On top of that, 3 Fenrir. Fenrir's crazy. It gives you cards in hand for things like Horus. Because it adds a card, it makes your small world free. The card's broken. I don't know what to tell you. And then I was on 1 Pancratops. I really wanted a card that I could small world into going second specifically. That was always a 2-for-1 because you get like small world into Fenrir, but the problem is a lot of the time, like if they have hard removal, right? Like let's say Fire King's got like the what is it called, Skyburn, the quick play. You've got like runic spells you want to deal with, right? A lot of the time, Pancratops ends up being, or sorry, Fenrir ends up being a like 1-for-1. But the problem is if you're small worlding into it, that ends up being a 2-for-1, and that feels real bad. So I wanted something that was pretty much always +1 for like a breaker, and Pancratops was kind of just the most widely applicable thing that I could think of. And again, it's like Earth, it's got 0 defense, so it's really easy to bridge into the deck. I was also on a Thrust package, 60, so I wanted something that was like really flexible like Thrust was. So I was on 3 Thrust, 1 Talents, 1 Reborn. This card was crazy. Thrust is really good in this deck where you're on 60 cards, right? You really want to be able to flexibly find non-engine that actually does something into the opponent. And it also is kind of engine as well into hand traps, right? Like, let's say they like Ash or Valor, your XE's Armor Fortress. You can just set the trap with Thrust turn 1, and it still lets you get into like Dark Knight Lancer. So it's also kind of Call by the Grave for that engine specifically. Talons was my main Thrust target. This card was crazy all day. I'll talk about it more when I get to the side deck, but I was actually really unhappy with my side, mostly because a lot of my side deck is Thrust targets, And every time I was activating Thrust and resolving it, I was like, I'm just gonna get talent. It's just really good. And then Reborn was a one-off tech. Again, if y'all played in 2021 Zoodiac format, you'll know that removing the Zoo monster and then them reborning it and still making format Zeus is infuriating. And it did come up multiple times during the tournament. Funnily enough, the other thing it came up a lot for was just reborning Fenrir after it got removed, because this card just independently is just such a strong thing to summon multiple times too. So I was really happy with this package. And then just to round off the non-engine, 3 imperm for my other thrust target and just another good non-engine, and then 1 call by the grave because this card's really good. I was thinking about cutting this, but I ended up actually being really happy with it because not only is it hand trap insurance, it actually feels really good into both Labyrinth and Fire King as like non-engine, right? Like being able to banish the furniture, being able to banish the Garunix or the whatever they might want to summon off Kieran or the Ponix, or it just comes up into a lot right now because graveyard stuff is fairly strong. So yeah, that's the main deck. I was very happy with the main deck. Legitimately zero complaints with it. It kind of hard carried me throughout the day. Like I said, I'll talk about it later, but my side deck was lacking comparatively. First though, the extra deck. So for the zoo stuff here, I was on 1 Hammer Kong, 1 Borbo, 1 Tiger Mortar, 2 Jokanine. A lot less zoo names than you people who played this deck historically might be used to, but because of a few reasons, it's kind of all you need now. Basically, the way the zoo count works out is you want 3 zoo names as a way to make a format Zeus. You want 1 zoo name for going first for your first Dark Knight Lancer, and then you want a Chalkanine specifically for going for your turn 3 Dark Knight Lancer. And so these are kind of the only ones that come up. There is an argument to play the 3rd Chalkanine, because then that 3rd Chalkanine gets you to a really easy SP line, as well as still having 1 left for Dark Knight Lancer, right? And that's like the max you would ever reasonably need in this deck. But I found the other stuff to be more important, and that's really like you have like 1 turn of Zeus, 1 turn of Lancer, 2nd turn of Lancer, another turn of SP. That's like assuming like an 8-turn game, which just isn't something that happens very often in this deck. And I didn't really want to play a ton of Zeus for like multiple format Zeus lines, because Typhon really complicates it now. You cannot just rely on make format Zeus pass anymore. It's really rough. So that is those are my zoos. Um, like I said, I was on 2 Dark Knight Lancer packages. Like I said, it makes your OTK lines really easy with this. What you do is you go for your first Dark Knight Lancer, and then the assumption is that they're going to out it at some point in their turn, right? That's a fair assumption to make. Because if they don't, I mean, you have 2 giant bodies anyway. But you into your turn 3, then you make Chalkanine. And this is why Whiptail or Third Blade is important, because Chalkanine has an effect to detach to reborn a zoo. So you detach to reborn the Third Blade or Whiptail in attack mode. You make your Armor Fortress, you search your last trap, and then you make your rank 7 number 2. And the spell specifically, let me find it again real quick. The Armored Exee spell here, it has an effect where it'll equip a Xyz monster in your graveyard to a monster you control, and the equipped monster, its attack becomes the original attack of the equipped monster, and you can, if that monster attacks, you can send the equipped card to the graveyard to attack again. So something like Thoroughblade plus Dark Knight Lancer equipped with another Dark Knight Lancer from last turn. This will be at 28 because it just has the same original attack as equipped with himself, plus an extra 200 for the Xyz material underneath, and the equipped card is against 300 for each of those. So you do 3,400. Send the equipped card to the graveyard. It's a 31 now because it loses 300. So you do another 31. That is 6,700 or 6,500. And then the Thoroughblade is the last 1,600 for 8k damage. So any zoo name, if you got Thoroughblade engraved, becomes OTK. Whiptail's a little bit weirder. Your opponent has to have it 1 monster for Whiptail, so you can attach it to this so that it gains the extra 300 on the 2 attacks to make up that like lost 400. But it's really nice. This is also a lot better to end on into a world with Tifon, or go into a world with Tifon, because the problem with something like Zeus, turn 3 into like a Typhon, right, is that Zeus can't activate its effect to let the Typhon. This, again, because of the spell, um, if you attach a Zoodiac monster to this, because the Zoodiacs are question mark attack, they are considered to have an original attack of 0. So you equip the Zoo with this. This goes down to 0 plus the 600, so just 600 attack. And then because it's now under 3k, you actually get to attach the Typhon. So that's also how you play into Typhon a bit more effectively in a world where that card exists now. So I really like the second Dark Knight Lancer package over something like more Zoo names and more Zeuses or any other like utility thing. These just are really good. For rank 8s, I was on one Photon Lord, one Dingirsu. So Photon Lord and Dingirsu, I wanted two rank 8s. These are what I consider the best rank 8s. Photon Lord, I definitely wanted to be on. This card just, lets you play through hand traps, things like Nib and stuff. This is like the one I really like. Dingirsu is a really interesting case. So Dingirsu has a couple of neat applications. Obviously, it's like, you have one for turn 1, one for turn 3. That's really nice. So of course, you can make like Zeus with Ding and stuff. You can send something going second. It's obviously just a really good card into like an established board, right? But also the other thing Dingirsu does that's really funny is the full armored Xyz trap does not have to summon like the Dark Knight Lancer. It's just like an XZ summon on resolution. So there's a couple of funny things you can do with that, including, you can go into your opponent's turn with, 2 Horus monsters on field. Say basically, remove my board if you want. I'm going to go plus infinity. And then, once they've tried to kind of tiptoe around that, or once they've already triggered your Horus monsters, you can XZ summon Dingirsu on their turn with a trap, and then it's also disruption because it sends a card. I did think about some other options for this slot that would also be good for that sake, right? Like Titanic Galaxy, for example, is still just a spell negate you can make whenever. Um, the Garunix Xyz is like a field wipe. Lancelot is another really interesting one where because you can like choose when you XZ summon into Lancelot, the fact that its negate is mandatory is a little bit less of a pain. But I just found that Dingirsu was the most flexible and the most varied in how it let me interact with the opponent, and so I ended up going with this. Um, and then for the rest of the Xyz monsters here, got one Typhon, one Zeus. Both of these are especially good in this deck. Obviously, Zeus is crazy and Zoodiac in general. Typhon has, of course, it's a good card, right? It's just a very generic out to things. But Typhon also has the added benefit where, again, because the trap is just a generic Xyz summon on your opponent's turn, if your opponent special summons more than 2 times from the extra deck in a turn, you can actually use the full armor trap to go into Typhon on their turn, and that catches a lot of people off guard. For example, into the branded matchup in particular, it comes up a lot because you can kind of floodgate them out of their Mirror Jade effect after they've gone through like Albion or Lubellion into Mirror Jade, and it's really nice for that. So both of these cards are very good in the deck, and obviously just good in general. And then last 2 cards here are IPSP. It's IPSP. I don't know what you want me to say on this one. SP in particular is really easy to make, like I mentioned earlier, with Chalk and Eye, so it comes up a lot. And IP is kind of like your backup play for if a lot of your stuff gets negated, right? Like if you open like Ratpier, you can elect to use Chalk and Eye's effect turn 1 to revive a Zoo. And then, if they like Ash your Dark Knight Lancer line, then you can just turn the Zoo plus the Dark Knight Lancer into SP if you've got nothing else, or IP if you've got like any extender, and then that's still a way to turn your Zeus into disruption even through hand traps. So that's the extra deck, and then side deck was really unfortunately not that good. So I'm just gonna kind of spread it out here real quick just to talk about. So I got 3 Nibs, 1 Kurikara, 3 Cosmic, 1 Dark Ruler, 1 Raigeki, 1 Duster, 1 Soul Release, 1 Evenly, 1 a piece of D Barrier and Magic Deflector, and then a singular Coach King Wolfbard. So, side deck, unfortunately, was the worst part of this deck the whole day. My main deck really carried me. Side deck felt real mid. Nib, I just never saw. I don't know if this card was actually worth it, but I just legitimately never saw this card. But in theory, it's good, right? It's Nibiru. Kurikara, I'll actually pull aside the cards that actually were really good for the day. These six right here were all crazy all day. Kurikara, I wanted a card that I could both thrust and small world into that be Pearly, because trying to draw the out into a Nor in 60 is really difficult. So I wanted to be as accessible as possible off of the cards I already ran in the main deck. And Kurikara fit that bill, right? It was like Kurikara or a Kaiju, and Kurikara is just better than a Kaiju in almost every instance. Cosmic is a crazy card. Not only is this really good into a lot of matchups just randomly, like for example, you can like remove the FKI going second into Fire King. You can remove the Fountain into Runic, stuff like that. It's also a really good going first card. Going first, it actually has a lot of applications into even more decks. For example, if they Diabell Star, um, in like Fire King or Rescue Ace, you can banish the original Sinful Spoils. Obviously, into Runic, you still banish things like Fountain. Into Labyrinth, it's a lot stronger when you're going first because they don't have a chance to do all their chainable traps quite yet. This was really good. And then these were my going first traps of choice. I really wanted to play normal traps that were very strong into a wide variety of the meta right now. Again, because I'm on 3 thrust main, and again, because of 60, I wanted them to be searchable in some way for my side going first cards so that I could actually see them somewhat consistently, right? So, Deflector is really good into a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff right now relies on field spells or quick plays to function. Things like, runic spells, the FKI, Vanadium field spells, stuff like that, and, D-Barrier's D-Barrier. This bottom row here is where I really messed up siding. Um, all 5 of these were meant to be one-ofs for thrust that I could side into going second. And none of them ever came up. The unfortunate truth of it is just that Talons is such a good card that they legitimately never actually came up as like something I could thrust into because it was usually just get Talons instead. I will say the Soul release I probably would not cut because this was for Labyrinth and Fire King, and I just didn't really see any Labyrinth and Fire King all day, which was that was just kind of unfortunate there. But in theory, this is still good into that matchup. And then Harpy, same thing, right? Where it's like this is really good into the random back row matchups you might see. But I just didn't really see those matchups. These 3, though, I would absolutely consider cutting. I would probably do 2 Mourner or Veiler. I really wanted like 2 more hand traps after siding that worked with Nibiru. And so, in theory, Mourner or Veiler would be these slots. And then I would put in probably Herald of the Abyss for the last slot. Both because it's another Pearly out, but also the one thing I noticed I was really missing from the side deck for thrust stuff is that I really wanted just a card that was something that I could thrust into, that was a spell that was non-destruction removal, right? Like something other than talents that was like actual non-destruction removal. And in theory, Herald of the Abyss kind of fits that build exactly. I don't know what else it could reasonably be. Maybe Change of Heart, but I feel like it would be Herald of the Abyss in that slot. Um, but yeah, that is more or less the deck. I have been working on this since since we got the armored cards revealed in the OCG, and then we didn't get armored Xyz until Maze of Millennia. So I have been working on this deck for 5 or 6 months, and I guess it paid off.
Amazing. Well, thank you again so much for the deck profile. I'm really glad that it paid off for you. Congrats again. Any final words before we end the call?
Uh, Yo, I gotta be real with you. This deck is not that good. Please don't buy like Ulti Whiptail. But also, it's a ton of fun. If any of y'all like are big Zoo fans and you've been missing the feeling of playing Zoo, this is the most playable it's been since Trident Span. So I do recommend it. Just don't go throwing money at Imsetis and Ulti Whiptails for it if you don't already have them.
Awesome. Thank you.